Hey, Victoria here, and I'm going to talk to you about being young and asexual, a bunch of things I did wrong, and a bunch of things you can do to just make smooth sailing so much easier and reduce a lot of pain and anxiety. When I first discovered the label asexuality, I'd gone through about 4 or 5 labels in my head as to what could possibly be wrong with me or why I was just different from everybody else. And when I found asexuality, I was absolutely ecstatic. It was just one of those things where I was like, oh my god, this must be me. Of course, I denied it for a while, came back to it, and it was equally as spectacular and shiny and perfect, so I stuck to it. I was only about probably 80% sure, though, when I started coming out to people. The first person I came out to was my friend Hannah, as a lot of people know, and she was cool with it. She doesn't blurt her mouth out a lot, so it was one of those things where I'm like, this is totally safe. Then when I went to school, I made the mistake of telling a handful of people, who in turn told a lot more people. And you would think, oh, no big deal, no big deal, but when you're about 70-80% sure of your sexuality, that can cause so much anxiety and just turmoil in your head, and it will really screw with you, because not only do you have this label that you're not even completely sure of floating around just the community, but on top of that, they'll come to you with so many questions, and some of them you don't even have answers to, because you probably haven't researched asexuality enough to even know. And on top of that, you can't even really draw from too much personal experience with the label, because you've only been living with it for, what, not that long. So my advice is, pick and choose who you tell carefully, be knowledgeable so you can actually explain what it is to people, and make sure you're 100% confident when it comes to telling people that you're asexual. Because I don't want to say that it's their right to ask you questions or for you to tell them, but I think it helps a lot more, even in your case, if you're just informed and you can explain it to somebody with confidence, that, and they might believe you a bit more, and you'll just feel a lot better, rather than them being confused and you being confused and bleh. Another problem with being young and asexual is a lot of people think that it might just be a phase. I mean, asexuality is supposedly this obscure thing, only 1% of the world. Why would it be you? Well, why wouldn't it be you? I think my advice to somebody who's young and asexual is start with your peers and kind of work your way from there. Don't tell people who you know are very judgmental, especially when it comes to age, and just really think about who you tell. Like for me personally, and this is going to sound so terrible, I know for a fact that when it comes to my mother, I probably wouldn't tell her for quite some time, probably until I've had a few boyfriends down the line. Then I might say, hey mom, this is something I've thought about for a very long time, I'm ace, and I think things would go over a lot better than if I just waited this long and told her. Some people you can come out to sooner because you know right away, hey, they'll accept this, but then there are other people in the world who take more time, need more proof, and I mean, if you don't care, then yeah, just tell everybody. It's really not your problem if they don't believe you, but if you want kind of harmony in your life, I would highly recommend just thinking about people as individuals instead of a whole, and what might work best when communicating to them the fact that you're asexual. Another thing that might really bug you in being young and asexual is just the fact that you're different. Teenagers, it's just incredibly popular for teenagers to think about sex, want to have sex. We're all a bunch of raging hormonal vessels with desires, and when you're asexual, you're a lot different from those people, and it might come to mind, well, wow, I'm never going to fit in with these people, I'm never going to have a proper relationship or lack of a relationship because people just don't understand this. And I'll be the first to openly admit that it's difficult sometimes. I mean, there have been times when I've been in situations where my asexuality will pop up and people have literally said to me, yeah, that's not possible, you're just repressing yourself, or, oh, well, yeah, I bet I can change that. And you know, in some cases it's not even their fault, because it's been drilled into their heads, whether it's by the media or just natural genetic development that, yeah, sex is important and everybody wants it. It's something you have to think about when you consider relationships with people, and let's face it, these days people aren't so proper wait till marriage anymore. And it's also something you have to sit through in conversation with people, because a lot of people like to discuss it. And honestly, I can't really give you any form of advice as to how to better the situation other than just learning to cope with the fact that, yeah, you're going to be a little bit different, but that's what makes you brilliant. Regardless of your orientation or anything, you're still a person. And I think once you realize that, it's just easier. There are better things you can do in your life and be concerned about. You can focus on studies and travel the world, and none of these things have anything to do with your orientation necessarily. It's just, it's who you are, and it's what you make of it. Ultimately, when it comes down to it, all asexuality is your inability to experience sexual attraction, and how you deal with it is just how you accept it. Once you accept it, once you realize that's who you are, that's really it. And if you can do that, everything else should be fine.